Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya.
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं दीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवं यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिं लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः. So I apologize for the inconvenience caused last week due to the concept of the Utsavam in Melkote temple. So we continue from where we had left earlier. Sutra number 12. So it is a sutra which is loaded with lot of information, and several quotations have been quoted from various works, which makes it a very, very important sutra. First, I will read out the sutra. Neerile nirappu kilaru neruppu kilaruma pode kudirndatharu ullathile aparadhattale aparadhattal sheetram pirandal poruppadu ivalukkaha. So the literal meaning is, just as a great fire can happen even over cool water, that is one way of translating it. Another way of translating is, there is a what we call the concept of Bhagavad-Gita, the fire that rises in the water or from the water or from within the water. So it is said that there can be volcanic eruptions from under the ocean. So that is known as Bhagavad-Gita in Sanskrit. So here also it is said, the mind or the heart of the Supreme Lord is generally very cool. It is not actually hot in the sense. So as I mentioned last week, what you say when you see a very beautiful gadget which is very attractive, say like an iPad or something like that, we say it's very cool. Cool means it's not in the sense of cold, but it means that it's in a very happy state. But what happens? Aparadhattale sheetram pirandal. So when the Supreme Lord sees that, despite all the precautions being given to human beings, these human beings like us commit different crimes, or crime may not be the right word, unrighteous activities. Like we may talk falsehood, we may not talk the truth, tell the truth. We may not do what has been ordained to be done. And also we may be doing what has been prohibited. So when this happens, when a person commits a sin, then the Supreme Lord becomes very angry. Because the do's and don'ts that have been given in the form of instructions have been transgressed by the Jivatma or individual soul. But then once again, the Supreme Goddess Mahalakshmi acts as a soothing factor. குளிர்ந்த தரு உள்ளத்திலே அபராதத்தாலே சீற்றம் பிறந்தால் பொறுப்பது இவளுக்காக. Then what does she say? She specifies the Supreme Lord and says, who in this world has not committed a crime, or who in this world has not committed a sin rather. So it is natural for human beings to commit sins. And this person, this Jivatma which has come to us, has surrendered himself unto us, and therefore it is our duty to protect him. It is your duty, it is our duty, especially it is your duty to protect him. And she pacifies him and sees to it that the Sharanagata Jivatma, or the individual soul who has surrendered, will transcend this cycle of births and deaths and ultimately attain the Supreme Lord. So this is the literal meaning of the shloka. So here several pramanas or several source texts have been quoted to highlight two important aspects. One aspect is the very strict nature of the Supreme Lord as far as implementing the rules is concerned. So he says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priya. I am equal to all beings in this world, in this universe. I don't actually love anyone, nor do I hate anyone. I don't have any animosity towards any person in this world. Nor do I have any affection towards any person in this world. I am equal to each and every being. But the next sentence is very important. Ye bhajanti tu maam bhaktya maite teshu chapya. So samoham sarva bhuteshu, I am equal to all beings in this world, is the general rule. And as we all know, there is an exception to every rule. In fact, it is said that the exception proves the rule. So he says, Ye bhajanti tu maam bhaktya. But if a person worships me or adores me with what is called as purest form of bhakti, without expecting anything in return, who loves me unconditionally, I am in them and they are in me. That means I am always thinking of them and they are always thinking of me. And those people, such people, I will actually pardon them and I will accept them into my fold. That's what the Supreme Lord says. But in this process, many a times, the Supreme Lord, when he is rule-minded, when he wants to highlight the greatness of the Shrutis and Smritis which lay down the do's and don'ts, what he does, he will not, probably he may forget. That means it's not forgetfulness. He does not prioritize. That's how we have to understand it. So when you say he forgets, is he also forgetful like us? No. When he prioritizes the implementation of the rules, then he may say, no, I will implement this strictly. But then what happens? The Supreme Goddess Mahalakshmi intervenes and she sees to it that the surrendered Jivatma, the surrendered soul, gets pardoned from the Supreme Lord and he gets accepted into the fold of the Supreme Lord. So the thing that is to be quoted, understood within quotes, is surrendered soul. Ye bhajanti tu maam bhaktya. A person who has performed Sharanagati or who has surrendered himself unto me, only such persons are eligible to avail of this facility. That is the invocation of the grace of the Supreme Lord. Not all ordinary people. So this is quoted in the commentary by Swami Manavana Mamni. And then he says, Sri Gunaratta Kosha, that I have already explained. Then in the Gita, he also says this verse is also quoted. Tanaham dvishatah krurani samsareshu naradhamani khipami ajasram ashubhan asurishveva yonishu asurim yoni mapannaha mudha janmani janmani mamaprapyaiva kaunteya samrityu samsara vartani. This is one very, very complicated and difficult topic. So in these two verses which I have just read out loudly, the Lord says, Tanaham dvishatah kruran samsareshu naradhaman. These are the worst people who transgress my orders that are laid down in the form of Shruti and Smriti. What do I do? In fact, when they actually transgress my orders, indirectly they are hating me. Tanaham dvishataha, he says. They have animosity towards me. And such people are the worst possible persons in this world. And what will I do? Khipami ajasram ashubhane asurishveva yonishu. I will make them be born in the worst possible, or I will give them the worst possible births. So, in the Indian context, he might be born as a Chandala, or he might be born as a person without the faculties, like he may be born a blind person, he may be born as a deaf person, dumb person, or he might be devoid of several natural faculties, etc., etc. He might not have a very proper shapely body. And asurim yoni mapannaha mudhaha janmani janmani. And this will continue for several births. And then they will never attain me at any cost at all. So this is a very, very complicated issue, because there is a debate in the Sampradaya whether there exists the concept of what is known as a Nitya Samsari. Nitya Samsari means a person who is eternally bound in this world, who will never attain moksha at any cost, at any time. So there are conflicting views in the Sampradaya whether Nitya Samsari exists or not. Because the problem is, if you say Nitya Samsari does not exist, then there are several issues that come into play. If you say Nitya Samsari exists, then there are several problems that are associated with it. So it's a very, very complex concept. I will not go into that detail now, because we may examine that concept in due course, in the course of Mumuksupadi. But the general belief, because there is no clarity on these issues, that is why it becomes complex, and also it is beyond our comprehension. That is another reason that it becomes very complex. So this is another verse that is quoted. So we have to balance all these views. Those who do not understand the Bhagavad-Gita properly, they will actually say these are all contradictory views. So Gita is full of contradictions, they will say. It's not so. There is no contradiction whatsoever, but there are certain issues where they seem to be apparent contradictions, but they have to be resolved in the right spirit, in the right manner. So another verse that is quoted in this context is Varaha Purane Prathame Amshe Madbhaktam Shvabacham Vapi Nindang Kuruvanti Ye Naraha Kalpakoti Shatenapi Nakshamam Iva Nakshamami Vasundhari. So the Varaha Purana is one very, very important pramana as far as Sri Vaishnava literature is concerned. So here he addresses Bhumi Devi, or the Bhu Devi, one of his three consorts, and says, even if a person is a Shvapacha, Shvapacha means a person who rears dogs and dog eater, correct. So even such a person, but it is once again today how to understand this concept is another problem. I'm not going to that. Because we understand that people in China and several other countries, they eat dogs, cats, snakes, and several other the animals. So especially Koreans. And another very important big problem is the concept of meat eating. How we have to understand it, what are the rules governing eating of meat is very important. So that is a very, very complicated concept. What the Manusmriti says about meat eating, because there are instances in our texts, like in Ramayana, it is specifically mentioned that Rama used to eat meat. And also there are several instances where it is mentioned in the Ramayana that the rishis were consuming meat. But there are several checks and balances there also, because in the Vali was a prakarana. When Vali was killed, it is mentioned that pancha panchanakha bhakshaha brahma kshatrena radha. Only 5 animals are permitted to be killed for the sake of eating only. And their meat can be consumed, not any other animals. And he says, Brahma Kshatrena Raghava, Kshatriyas and Brahmins can eat it. That is another big problem. So this is a very, very complicated issue, which if you are interested, we'll have a separate session. And even in Mahabharata, I think I have not read Mahabharata specifically from this point of view. And it is very difficult. Ramayana means you can read it in 9 days, in a matter of 9 days. Navaha Parayana is very much prevailing. And even Ekasarga Parayana, several methods of performing are there, the Ramayana Parayana. But Mahabharata is more than 1 lakh shlokas, and generally Mahabharata is not chanted in the Parayana way or Parayana Krama. So once I asked my guru, and he said, why Mahabharata is not chanted as Ramayana? No. Mahabharata is not chanted. Generally, it is read like of course, not like as casually as we read a novel, but it's not read as reverently as Mahabharata, as Ramayana. There are so many issues are there with regard to each of these things, so we will be digressing too much. But one very important aspect is, once I asked my guru, so there are so many kalpas to do Ramayana Parayana. Why not Mahabharata Parayana? Because Mahabharata is equally revered as Ramayana. Or sometimes it is more revered than Ramayana. Because in the Vimalokacharya himself, in the Srivachana Bhushanam, he gives a very beautiful statement. He says, Itihasa Shreshtamana Ramayanattal Shirairandavalektam Shuddhagirahi. Itihasa Shreshtamana Mahabharatattal Tuduponavanyektam Shuddhagirahi. 2 very, very important aspects, because Ramayana and Mahabharata are like 2 eyes as far as Sri Vaishnavas are concerned. Because all the pramanas or quotations are taken from Ramayana and Mahabharata only predominantly. And Bhagavatam can in a way be called a part of Mahabharata from certain points of view. So, what Pidalokacharya very beautifully says is, Itihasa Shreshtamana Ramayanatta Shirairandavalettam Shuddhagirahi. Ramayana mainly focuses on mentioning the greatness of goddess Mahalakshmi, who is none other than Sita in the context of Ramayana, who underwent imprisonment in Ravana's place just for the sake of us all, for the sake of all the Jivatmas in this world. Mahabharatattal Tuduponavanetam Shuddhagirahi. Whereas in Mahabharata, though Rukmini plays a significant role, she is not the focus. Of course, Rukmini Kalyana is there, several other things are there in Mahabharata also. but the role of Rukmini is very, very, very limited. Therefore, he says, Tudu Ponavanetam Shubhiradi. The entire Mahabharata focuses on the divinity and greatness of Lord Krishna. Because without Krishna, there is no Mahabharata. This can be, and when great scholars have compared the role of Krishna as depicted in Mahabharata and as depicted in Ramayana or in Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavatam, Krishna is seen as a supreme Lord, and how he protects his devotees, how he interacts with his devotees, how he blesses his devotees, how he is fond of them, he is enamored of his devotees is mentioned in Bhagavatam. Whereas in Mahabharata, he comes forward as a statesman, as an administrator, as a person who is a Sarvajna, or who is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, etc. So those aspects or those characteristics are most appealing and respectable by intellectuals. So in Bhagavatam, we see Krishna as an emotional person from an emotional perspective. Whereas in the Mahabharata, his panditya or his scholarship is highlighted. And scholarship can be recognized only by scholars. So there is a beautiful statement which says there is a lot of difference between the Bhagavata Krishna and Mahabharata Krishna. That means Krishna's personality as depicted in Bharata or Mahabharata is totally different from Krishna's personality that is depicted in the Bhagavata. So as I just mentioned, Krishna's greatness or outstanding qualities as a statesman is proved in the Mahabharata, is shown, depicted beautifully. Krishna's achievements as a person who is well versed in statecraft, it's wonderful. Similarly, how he tried to compromise between the Kauravas and Pandavas. How he plays a very important role in the process of the Yuddha or the war that happened between the Kauravas and Pandavas. All these aspects are very unique and wonderful, but unfortunately, nobody studies them from these points of view. Anyway, but why I have mentioned this is, generally these topics are not all mentioned in the general discourses, etc., that are given. Because scholars generally, they focus on one or two aspects that is relevant, and they will not at all touch upon these subjects because they are not very familiar with these aspects. Anyway, in the present context, so he says, even if you are in the Varaha Mahapurana, which talks about the Varaha Charama Shloka also, I think I have explained that. If I have not explained it, I will explain it because it is most important for all of us. The Varaha Charama Shloka is very, very important. Are you aware of that, Keshav Dasji? Okay, thank you. So if you want me to explain, or if other people want to know about it, I will take some time. I don't mind digressing because that is one of the most important instructions given by the Supreme Lord Narayana to all of us, and it is most relevant to all of us. So in case many of you are not familiar with it, I will not mind digressing. I will say a few words about it whenever you want. So how many of you are familiar and how many of you are not familiar? You can just let me know. You can tell me right away, or you can just put it in the text box.
Swami, I searched for Varaha Charama slokas in the editions of Varaha Purana which I could get, but I haven't found. If you have an edition that has it,
even I am. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, used to say he has studied all the editions of Mahapurana, the Varaha Purana, and he has not got it.
So I found one other verse by one Gaudiya Acharya in his commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam. He also quotes Varaha Purana, but I could not find that verse either. But it is similar to Varaha Charama Sloka. I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah. But what has happened is, it has been quoted in all our Purvacharya's works, and therefore we are sure that it is authentic. But why it has not come in the printed editions? That is a very important. That is a very it's a very difficult question to answer. So anyway, I will. Okay. It is similar, but the Varaha Charma Shloka is much more. It is more deep, and it is more more appealing also, and very much in line with what happens in reality to all people, to all persons. Anyway, I will explain that on a particular day. So coming in that Varaha Mahapurana, what the Lord says is, even if a person is a Shvapaka, Shvapacha, that is a dog eater, if he becomes a devotee and he worships me unconditionally, then if another person who is supposed to be born in a higher caste or higher class, the word caste may not be very appealing or not be who belongs to a supposedly higher class, does not respect him or derides him because he is a Shvapacha, despite he being a great devotee, I will not pardon such a person who censures a devotee even though he is a Shvapaka. I will never pardon him, in fact. That's what he says. So, all these are contrasting statements which have to be understood in the right spirit, and also without any contradiction, without any mutual contradiction. So that is what is very important. So I'll read out the commentaries now. Suhridam sarvabhuteshu engirapadiye sarvabhuta suhritvam samashreeniyatve samattvamahira swabhava vihehangalane prapannamai kudirnatirullattile. So initially what the Supreme Lord states is, Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatvanam shanti. I am in another place he says, aham hi sarvajnanam bhokta prabhurevacha. I am the person who is worshipped and also who bestows the fruits of yajnas. That is, it might be of different yajnas, dravya yajna, tatha yajna, bhuta yajna, tatha pare, swadhyaya jnana yajna, rishya samhita vrata. And then he says, suhridam sarvabhutana. I am the best friend of all beings in this world. Any person who understands me is bound to attain serenity, is bound to attain fulfillment. So this is the general statement. But on the other hand, if a person, if he commits sins unknowingly, the punishment is less. If he knowingly commits sins, the punishment is more. But if a person says, I have committed this unknowingly, so I am not at all sinful, no. Because there is a principle in law in every country, ignorance of law is not an excuse. So suppose a person, he kills somebody. When he is charged for murder or something like that, and he may say, I didn't know that it was a crime. Will he be pardoned? No. Because the very, very axiomatic principle, axiom means, I'm sure you will be familiar with this word. What we call an axiom is, what is an axiom? An axiom is that which is an unquestionable truth. So, an axiomatic statement that exists in all countries is, ignorance of law is not an excuse to commit a sin or a crime. So if you commit something commit a sin without your knowledge, the Punishment might be less, but you cannot escape punishment. These are all very, very subtle concepts that we have to understand. But there are several other questions also that might arise in the sense. Now, for example, when you study the Shastras, especially the Anhika Granthas that are prescribed for Shri Vaishnavas, if you perform all the rituals that are mentioned, you will have to do it from morning 6 o'clock to night 10 o'clock without any break. But can we do it today in today's scenario? Is it possible to do it? Because society has changed so much, world has changed so much. How do you do it? Then will we be incurring the disgrace or the animosity of the Supreme Lord? These are all very difficult questions to answer in today's context. So there are several general statements also, which say you follow this much. For example, in Ramayana it says, Anrishamsyam parodharma, etc., which are general statements. Then there are some statements which seem to be general, but they are exceptions. Then there are some statements which seem to be exceptions, but they are also generalized several times. So to have a very balanced and integrated view of all these things together is most difficult thing to attain. But it has been done in our ancient works of the Purvacharyas. And we also have to have the necessary wherewithal and perseverance to go to that stage. But at this stage, we listen to what is mentioned in the works of our Purvacharyas and try to follow as much as possible. Khipami Nakshamami ennum padiyana Sheetram Pirandal Aparadathai Poruppade Kimetam Nirdoshaha Jagati Ityadi Padiye Tannudaya Upadeshadihalade Acheetrathai Aati Dayai Janipikkum Ivadukaha Vengai Ahayane Sambandhagyanam Pirandavanakkum Aparada Bhayattare Purushakara Puraskaranam Apekshitam Yendrikarutte. So then one more important aspect is touched upon here. Suppose there is a person who meticulously follows all the Shastras, and he has explicitly not committed any sin. If he is following all the Shastras, naturally it means that he is not committing sins. Even for is the Pirati Sambandha, the relationship of Goddess Mahalakshmi with the Lord, is it significant for such a person also, or such a person doesn't need it? In other words, the question is, if a person has not at all committed any sin explicitly, does he also have to go through Goddess Mahalakshmi, or he can approach the Supreme Lord directly? Then the answer is no. It is the best possible way to go through Goddess Mahalakshmi only at any cost. So that is the verdict given in this context. Because nobody can avoid the existence of or be ignorant about the existence of Goddess Mahalakshmi and her role in the Jivatma attaining the Supreme Lord. So even if he is not explicitly committed any crime or sin, he has to invoke the grace of Goddess Mahalakshmi at any cost without fail. Therefore, Srimate, that is the Supreme Lord, consisting of Goddess Shri, is very, very, very important. That is the purport of this sutra. இவள் தாயாய் இவர்கள் கிளேசம் பொறுக்க மாட்டாதே அவனுக்கு பத்னியாய் இனிய விஷயமாயிருக்கையாலே Kalladivatra Purushakaram. This is the sutra, and the commentary is as follows. Ittalair karya erittu kondum attaliyai vashikarittum irandu talayum பொருத்துகைக்கு இவள்தான் கண்ணழிவற்ற புருஷகாரம் என்றவருடைய செய்கிறார். இவள் தாயா என்று தொடங்கி, அதாவது தொம்மாதா சர்வலோகானாம் என்னும் அகில ஜெகன்மாதரம் என்னும் சொல்லுகிறபடியே இச்சேதனற்கு இவள் மாதாவாய் தன் தமக்கள் அழகு சென்றாத்தாய் மாறாவார் தரிக்ககில்லார் என்கிறபடியே அந்த சம்பந்தமடியாக இவர்களுடைய கிளேசங்கண்டால் சகிக்க மாட்டாரே விஷ்ணு பத்னி என்கிறபடியே அவனுக்கு பத்னியாய் பித்தர பனிமலர் மேற்பாவைக்கு என்கிறபடியே அவன் தன் வைலட்சண்யத்தைக் கண்டு பிச்சேரி தன் சொல் வழி நடக்கும்படி அபிமத விஷயமாயிருக்கையாலே கண்ணழிவத்த புருஷகாரம் என்கை. One very important aspect is to be known here. Many a times a boy or a son may ignore his mother. He may also sometimes, we have seen in certain cases in the world today, we see that a son might hate his mother also. But the mother can never hate a son. So there is a beautiful shloka, stotra by Shankaracharya, where he addresses Goddess Parvati, of course. But in the last quarter of every verse he says, Kuputro jayeta kvachidapi kumata na bhavati. In this world, it is possible that a bad son can take birth. But there is no possibility at all whatsoever that there is a bad mother. So a bad son can take birth, but a bad mother can never be there in this world. And he says, you are my mother, and he addresses Parvati. So the meaning of this sutra will be explained in the next class.
Swami Adiyen, Dasan question. Is Kunti Devi considered a bad mother because she has given up Karna when he was born because of her mistakes, Swami? Is that...
Sorry, I could not understand your question, please.
Yeah, when you gave the example of, a bad, there's no such as bad mother. There could be a bad son, but I just, Kunti Devi came to my mind, and when she gave up Karna, so I was thinking, is that bad, or is that her fate, or how is that reconciled?
Yeah, that is, see, the main problem is, when she was unmarried, how could she beget a son? So it was due to her chanting the mantra. What happened later is, it's not very clear, in the sense you cannot take it in a physical way, how it happened, etc. But ultimately, when an unmarried woman gives birth to a child, her chastity is questioned. So it will lead to a lot of complications. And secondly, it is also the will of fate that it happened like that. But ultimately, what happened? She could never. Did she give up her love for her son? No. That is why, when at the end of the Mahabharata war, when Yudhishthira, Dharmaraja, and his remaining 4 brothers are offering oblations of Tarpana to all the people who have departed, he says, please offer a Tarpana to Karna also, because he was your elder brother. Then Yudhishthira was flabbergasted. It's like lightning descending upon him. Then it is said that he cursed. He gave a curse that no woman in this world should be able to protect a secret. I don't know whether you know that or not. You heard about it or not?
No, sir.
So he gave her a very explicit curse. He gave an explicit general curse that no woman in this world should be able to keep a secret. So there is a secret, and there is a saying in India, I don't know what is it, how it is in the Western, the Indian tradition, that women cannot be trusted with secrets. Once again, that is another matter of conjecture. We can discuss, is it not discriminatory against women? Are we not discriminatory, etc., etc. But you have to study the nature of women, what they represent in nature, etc. Those are all very, very subtle issues.
Thank you, Adiya.
So I'm concluding the Mangala Shloka. Nached Ramanujetyesha chatura chaturakshari kamavastham prapadyante jantavo antamadrisha punyam bhoja vikasaya papadvan takshayaya cha Shriman avirabhut bhumau Ramanuja divakara Trinikrita virinchar nirankushay bhutayah Ramanuja padam bhoja samashrena shalinaha.
श्रीशैलेश दयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ